assistance that's getting in to people who need it. With regard to humanitarian pauses, again, we see this as a way of further facilitating the ability to get assistance in, to make sure that the resources are in place as well to absorb the assistance coming in, to make sure that it gets to the people who need it. We see it as a way also, and very importantly, of creating a better environment in which hostages can be released. And this is a very important piece. So, as I mentioned already, and I won't repeat it, there are a number of very important practical questions that go along with this that we've agreed to discuss and work on. We've agreed that our teams will continue to talk about this in the days ahead. And from our perspective, this can be a critical way to advance many of the interests that I discussed earlier. I haven't seen the details about the strike, Leon, that you alluded to that hit the AFP office in Gaza. And let me just say and say again that as we stand strongly for Israel's right and obligation to defend itself, we also believe that it's vitally important how Israel does this, including with the highest regard for the protection of civilians, and that, of course, includes journalists who are doing extraordinary work under the most dangerous conditions to tell this story to the world, something that we deeply admire, deeply respect, and we want to make sure that they're protected.
The next question goes to Corinne Betzalel with Channel 12.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Blinken, for being here. Two issues. Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, is talking right now. If following his speech or his remark, another front will open in the north, will the U.S. actually use its firepower in the region not only to deter but also to destroy target in Lebanon or, if needed, in Iran? And on the hostages, the Biden administration is asking Israel for a temporary pause, and we understand it is not a ceasefire. But do you have any guarantees, any assurances that this temporary pause will lead to hostage release? And I know you have heard the family of the hostages today outside the Kiryat base. And if may I, can you assure us that the United States will not hold Israel back before the main objective of this war will fulfill, which is eliminating Hamas?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me take the second question first. There are no guarantees about anything. As a general proposition, and maybe even more specifically in the context of the fight against Hamas. But we are absolutely focused on getting hostages back and getting them back to their families in safety. And we believe that, among other things, a humanitarian pause could help that effort, could facilitate it. It's one of the reasons why we're focused on it. But regardless, our determination to get people back is manifested every single day in our efforts to do just that. And as I said, and said repeatedly, and as President Biden has said and said repeatedly, we stand strongly with and behind Israel in its right and obligation to defend itself, defend its people, and take the steps necessary to try to ensure that this never happens again. Nothing has changed, and that won't change. With regard to Lebanon, with regard to Hezbollah, with regard to Iran, we have been very clear from the outset that we're determined that there not be a second or third front opened in this conflict. President Biden said on day one to anyone thinking of opening a second front, taking advantage of the situation, don't. And we backed up those words, not only with work that we've done with many partners in the region to reinforce that message, but with practical deeds, including the deployment of 2 aircraft carriers battle groups to the region, including with action that we've taken, for example, against missiles coming from Yemen in the direction of Israel, shooting them down, including as well with strikes that we took in response to multiple attacks on our personnel in Iraq and Syria, who were there, as I said earlier, to try to prevent a resurgence in the region of ISIL, of Daesh. We remain absolutely determined in that effort, and I'm not going to get into hypothetical situations, but all I can say is we're committed to deterring aggression from any part, and we'll take steps necessary to deal with it.
For the next question, Vivian Salama with the Wall Street Journal.
Mr. Secretary, thank you, as always, for bringing us along with you in your travels. Before we left D.C., you stressed that the U.S. was discussing with Israel the current conflict, and you added, we will also be focusing on the day after. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? In particular, what is being done to ensure that whatever does come after doesn't spin into potentially short or long-term occupation? And also, are there discussions at all to create a multilateral force for Gaza? And if so, would the U.S. be willing to take part in something like that? Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian. Here's what we know, and I think is agreed among everyone. There cannot and must not be a return to the pre-October 7th status quo. That's unacceptable. It's not tolerable for Israel. It shouldn't be acceptable or tolerable by anyone else. And that means that the idea of Hamas remaining responsible for governance, such as it was, and security, and posing an ongoing and enduring threat to Israel and its citizens is unacceptable. So that's one thing we know. We also know that Israel cannot reassume control and responsibility for Gaza. And it's important to note that Israel has made clear it has no intention or desire to do that. So within those parameters, we are and will continue to have discussions with partners throughout the region and well beyond about what should follow once Hamas is defeated. There are a number of possibilities, permutations, but it's really premature to get into any detail about that. As important is putting this into a bigger picture, a bigger vision of how we achieve enduring and lasting peace and security in the region. And as I said earlier, the United States is convinced, we have been for some time, and I think we're only reinforced in that conviction since October 7th, that the best path, maybe even the only path, as I said, is through 2 states for 2 peoples. Again, that is the only way to ensure lasting security for a Jewish and democratic Israel, the only way to ensure that Palestinians achieve their legitimate aspirations for a state of their own. So I think it's important, as we're talking about all of this with every partner in the region, Israel, our Arab partners, and many others, as well as the broader international community, that we have that big frame in mind, and whatever we do, whatever is done, also helps to advance that. So that's how we're looking at it right now.
Can I just press you, Mr. Secretary, because you're talking about the defeat of Hamas, and I'm wondering, you know, for Hamas is not just a bunch of individuals, but probably an ideology as well, and especially with the intense bombardment that we're seeing in Gaza right now, the potential for extremism down the line is high. And so, you know, when you say defeat Hamas, is that being factored in, and what are you doing then to address those issues as well?
Yeah, Vivian, you're exactly right. This is about dealing with Hamas in terms of defeating it physically. That is making sure that it can't repeat what it did on October 7th. But it is also about defeating an idea, a perverted idea, but an idea that we have to combat with a better idea, with a better future, with a better vision for what that future can be, and demonstrating that we're committed to achieving that future, that vision. Because in the absence of that, even after Hamas, those who sing the siren song of nihilism will find open ears. So it's imperative in our judgment that not only is Hamas dealt with in a way that October 7th can never be repeated, but that we lay out a clear vision and a path to achieve that vision that gives people something to hope for, to buy into, to grab onto. And I believe that there is a broad and strong coalition throughout the region that wants to do exactly that. All of these countries are on one side of the equation. Who's on the other side of the equation? Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. So it's incumbent upon us, I think, not only to lay out that vision, but to be clear about the ways that we propose to achieve it. This is not flipping a light switch, needless to say, given how deep-rooted and enduring these problems are. But we have to address this, and we have to address it in concrete ways and with determination. Because again, it comes back to exactly what you said. We have to demonstrate that we have a better idea and a way to achieve it.
For the final question, Muhannad Tutuji.
Of course, we've been listening to the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken addressing the media there in Israel after his talks with Israeli leadership, striking a balance between emphasizing Israel's right to defend itself as well as the imperative to protect innocent Palestinians. With me in the studio is DW's Middle East analyst, Shani Rosanes. Shani, lots of talk there from the Secretary of State about the need for humanitarian pauses. He mentioned that several times. But it sounds, reading between the lines, that there's still work to be done. What was your take?
I agree with you, Michael. There's an understanding that it needs to be done. There's the moderate Arab countries that are pushing for that. There's a lot of pressure in America, around the Western world. We see the numbers. We see what's happening in Gaza. And there's also an understanding, the way Americans see it, that the pause will allow Israel to get more credibility, more time, in order to complete its mission. But we don't see any clear indications that they have agreed on the where and the what's and the how. He himself says that. We know it was this was delayed. We know it was a longer visit and longer meetings than planned. He still has some of his representatives, American representatives, staying in Israel, trying to find how to strike that balance. We've seen Israeli announcements from Gallant, the defense minister, and Netanyahu's office saying, we have not agreed on fuel coming in, which is a contested issue. We will not give any pause, any humanitarian relief until we see any progress with the hostages. The way Israel tries to keep the equation is humanitarian issues are our hostages, alongside the humanitarian needs of the Gazan population. So
in the last 48 hours, particularly, we've been hearing a lot the words ceasefire and humanitarian pause. Please make it clear for our viewers what's the difference between those two, and why is that nuance so significant for the actors in this conflict? Well,
first of all, pause is a unilateral step. Israel will decide on it when, how, and for how long, and it can just abruptly stop it at any minute. And a ceasefire, which will bring Hamas in, that's something that is not feasible. Israel does not want to be even seen in any way communicating, to negotiating, giving up to Hamas. It needs to stay strong. That's what it sends out also in its message in the military front. And Americans seem to be so far willing to let Israel do that.
Got it. That is a Shani Rosanes. Many, many thanks. That is your DW News update live from Berlin. Don't forget, you can always get DW News on our website at DW. I'm Michael Oku. Thanks for watching. There's more news right around the corner.
if it really is possible to reverse aging? Researchers and scientists all over the world are in a race against time. They are peers and rivals, with one daring goal: to outsmart nature. More life. Watch now on YouTube, DW Documentary.
Actually, we don't have a choice. I think that we have little time left to save the planet. So we have to do whatever we can as fast as possible.
We only have one generation left. Just 25 years to implement the greatest revolution since the dawn of the industrial age. Replacing fossil fuels with renewable energy around the world without exception. Is a global energy transformation really possible and affordable? Or is it all an illusion? Researchers